Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for being here. Today, we are here to talk about Rhonda Marie Fisher. Not just a case file, but a woman who is loved by her family. Rhonda was born in New York on October 12, 1956, and she was 30 years old at the time of her murder. She was last seen near the area of Leetsdale, Monaco in the city of Denver on March 31st, 1987. Rhonda was a mother, she was a daughter, a sister, a cousin, and a niece. And her family members have waited nearly 4 decades for answers. We honor her today by telling her story and explaining how her case was finally solved. On April 1st, 1987, a passing motorist discovered Rhonda's body down an embankment in the 3500 block of South Perry Park Road in rural Douglas County in Sedalia. She had been sexually assaulted and she had been strangled, and she was found without any clothing. Early investigative leads included acquaintances and serial offenders active in the Denver metro area during that time, but unfortunately did not result in any arrests. Earlier this year, our cold case unit reopened this case with a fresh set of eyes and new forensic opportunities. They began a full, systematic review of every piece of evidence in Rhonda's case. Many items had not been examined using today's DNA capabilities. Working closely with the Unified Forensic Lab and our property and evidence team, investigators conducted a comprehensive evidence review of this cold case. The critical DNA was located on paper bags that were placed on the victim's hands, originally used to preserve trace evidence. In late October, again of this year, we received a CODIS case-to-case DNA match. CODIS, of course, stands for Combined DNA and Index System, the national DNA database maintained by the FBI. DNA recovered from the paper bags matched DNA from 3 1979 homicide victims of Vincent Groves. Obtaining a DNA profile from paper bags nearly 40 years old is exceptionally rare, highlighting how critical a careful case and evidence review is. About Vincent Groves. Groves is considered to be one of Colorado's most prolific serial killers. He had a long and violent history targeting vulnerable women between 1978 and 1988. He was involved in sex trafficking and drug distribution. He was convicted of murder in 1982, but served less than 5 years in prison. And almost immediately after he got out of prison, he began committing more violent crimes, including murder. Through DNA and investigative leads, he is believed to be responsible for at least 12 homicides. Also, he's believed to be responsible for an attempted murder and a sexual assault. And again, there is probably a lot more victims out there that law enforcement has yet to connect the dots on. While Groves cannot be held accountable in a courtroom due to his death, today we are able to finally provide answers and resolution to Rhonda's family and to her friends. This case underscores our dedication at the Douglas County Sheriff's Office to solving these cold cases and embracing new technologies. This case is a clear example of how a fresh review of these cold cases and new forensic options can lead to breakthroughs. Again, this case, when they finally put it together, was solved in less than a year. I'm extremely proud of the teamwork between our forensic lab, the Sheriff's Office, our investigators, our property and evidence team, and to date, the Douglas County Sheriff's Office has solved 7 cold cases in 7 years. That's truly exceptional on any scale. I want to emphasize that this is about Rhonda. Again, she was a mother, she was a daughter, a sister, a cousin, a niece. And the Douglas County Sheriff's Office will never stop seeking justice for victims and for their families. There was a lot of teamwork that went into this case, but two people that did the heavy lifting on this investigation were Michelle Kennedy, our crime analysis supervisor. Michelle is also an accredited investigative genetic genealogist, and Shane Williams. Shane is a forensic scientist at the Unified Forensic Crime Lab. And with that, I'd be glad to take any questions you might have. Yes, ma'am.
Has anybody spoken to family members of Rhonda's, and how is this received?
They have, and with that, I'll turn it over to Michelle.
We did speak with Rhonda's family a couple of weeks ago when we got the notification, and they're very happy to have answers. Unfortunately, her mother and father and brother were all deceased when we solved this case, so we weren't able to, they weren't able to learn that information before they died.
So who did you speak with?
We spoke with a cousin, one of Rhonda's cousins.
Other questions?
Was Groves known to Rhonda? Do investigators know how they encountered one another?
From my understanding of the investigation, we may never know the answers to that. Rhonda was picked up hitchhiking, and so Groves was known to victimize hitchhikers. And so I don't know if, Michelle, you want to add to any of that?
The last place she was known, the last place she was known to be was walking on the street in the area of Monaco and Leedsdale. So we don't know if she was hitchhiking or if she went to a bar after that or someplace else to a friend's house. So we don't know how they encountered each other. From the case information, we don't have any information that they knew each other.
Do you know what time that was that she was last seen?
I believe it was in the evening. I don't remember the time, maybe around 7:30 p.m., sometime around there.
And was Groves investigated back then?
He was looked at in this case. He has long been considered a possible suspect in this case, but there was another potential suspect that we looked at as well. And we needed the DNA confirmation to be sure.
Quick question about the DNA evidence on the paper sacks. That just to clear, that was his DNA found in the paper sacks, right?
Correct.
Shane, you want to talk about that?
Yes, that is correct. The paper bags were placed over Rhonda's hands at the scene of the crime and collected by the coroner when she was being processed at the coroner's office. Those paper bags were saved and had not been touched for 40 years. And so the thought is that whatever skin cells were on her hands also transferred to the inside of those brown paper bags. And so it was a combination of Rhonda's DNA and Vincent's DNA.
Is that a typical process to bag hands and then to test evidence, or not?
So it is typical for on-scene coroner officers to bag hands of homicide victims. Traditionally, fingernail scrapings are taken by the coroner at the coroner's office, so it is to protect that trace evidence that might be underneath the fingernails of the victim. As the sheriff mentioned, that evidence was tested in 2017, but there was no viable lead identified at that time. And so since the paper bags had never been tested before, we thought this would be a good option as a possible answer to this case.
And back then, I mean, I would imagine the medical technology or the medical, forensic technology. I mean, when the medical examiner put those bags, they didn't even think about the DNA back then.
Correct. DNA was not a science that was being focused on or even known in 1987. It was very, very new, and the coroner wouldn't have been doing it for that purpose, but thankfully they did so that we could solve this case.
You keep saying trace evidence. Would you classify the evidence that you found as a large sample, a trace sample? How would you classify the sample?
Great question. So trace evidence would be skin cells left behind by an individual, which is smaller quantity and quality than a body fluid, such as blood, semen, or saliva. We did not find any body fluids in this case linking to Mr. Groves. It was just what in DNA analysis we call trace analysis, which is small, finite amounts of skin cells that we were able to match back to Mr. Groves.
You
Yes.
mentioned when you did this case review, you tested every piece of evidence you have preserved. Can you talk about all the other things that you
Really, the only thing that was left that had not been touched from the original case in '87 were these brown paper bags. Other items had been sent for testing in 2017. Otherwise, this was the only item, the brown paper bags, that had never been tested before.
What were those other items in 2017?
They would have been items collected directly from Rhonda's body. So orifices are swabbed as part of the standard procedure by a coroner's office. And those would have been tested for foreign male DNA, which was not developed in 2017.
Can you talk about how often this office does case reviews? Is there something that triggers that review?
Answer that.
We've probably done 5 or 6 evidence reviews at this point. So it was something we started a couple of years ago where we, myself and we bring a DNA scientist with us and a detective, and we evaluate all the evidence, reviewing the case reports and the crime scene photos, and come up with determinations about what would be valuable to send or probative for DNA testing.
Gotcha. You say 5 or 6 reviews of this specific case, or
Different cases, correct,
Got it.
yes.
Sheriff, you kind of touched upon this already. The suspect's dead. The victim, obviously, you know, their families know. What does this mean for the case itself? Like, how does this impact justice, if at all?
The case is closed, so if anything, it just brings closure to friends and family of Rhonda. It brings, frankly, closure to some other victims of Vincent Groves, just to know there were other victims out there. I have no doubt there's probably going to be other victims identified of Vincent Groves that are still out there that, again, that law enforcement has been unable to connect the dots with. So it'll be good for the family to put this behind them and have some resolution.
Is this an expensive process to go through, trace evidence kind of thing? Is this just a regular DNA sample?
So this is considered a regular DNA sample with today's standards of DNA testing. We would use this technology for all crimes today and for all types of evidence that we receive at the crime lab. So it is a very standard practice in DNA analysis today.
anyone else?
Can anyone talk about the circumstances relating to his release from jail? 5 years seems like a pretty short time to be in jail for murder.
Michelle, do you want to talk to any of that?
I don't know that we have any of that information.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So I don't know exactly what led to his release, but he was released by the state of Colorado only to reoffend.
Can you just sort of sum up who he is, like all the harm he caused in his life and what you expect he did?
Well, Vincent attended Wheat Ridge High School. He was a high school athlete. It seems after high school he went to college, did not do well in college, and then started a life of drugs and began to engage in violent crime. And so I guess nobody would really know what led him to start murder, but certainly he had a lifestyle of drugs. He engaged in human trafficking and just that lifestyle. He was a janitorial supervisor, and so he had job sites all over the metro area, and so he had a lot of latitude to do the things that he wanted to do. And unfortunately, he turned to murder. And again, he is one of the most prolific serial killers in Colorado's history.
Exciting that this case was solved. How many more cold cases is your department looking at right now in this same manner?
Well, we interpret cold cases, of course, as murder, as unidentified missing persons, as missing persons, and then, of course, felony sexual assaults. We have about 35 cases that are still outstanding. And so what's important for people to know is those crimes were never forgotten. The loved ones and the victims were never forgotten. And we are going to continue to solve these cold cases. And quite frankly, I think we're very close to solving a couple more. And I'm looking forward to additional press conferences.
How large is your cold case unit? Can we stop?
We have a total of 4 now. three that are working on cold cases. And so it's important for any law enforcement agency, and I've seen this done different ways. If you don't have a dedicated group of people that do nothing but cold cases and you just assign these out to various detectives, they're never going to get solved. You have to have people that are dedicated to that is their only job responsibility is cold cases. So anything else has been shown to be inadequate to get these solved.
Any plans to expand the unit?
I'm sure we would love to. There's plenty of work for these guys to continue to do, but you know, it's a challenge to get additional staff. So I'm hopeful that we'll be able to expand eventually.
You did say some of her family members had passed, but what was their reaction when you called and said, we have solved her murder, you know?
They were relieved to have some answers, and they were thankful. I think her cousins at one point in time said her head was spinning with this information, so I think they're very grateful. Just to have answers after so long. And then, of course, sadness that Rhonda's parents and brother weren't able to get these answers before they died.
Do you know how many children she had, Rhonda?
We believe she did have a son, but she did not have custody of her son, so we have not been able to locate him.
Michelle, what does this mean to you to work on a case for so long and to get answers?
It's pretty special. It's why I enjoy working on cold cases, because it's very rewarding, and just to be able to give families some answers and speaking with them is one of the most valuable things that I do when I work on these cases at the end, and be able to talk to these families and give them some answers. Very important.
Do you feel like you form a connection with someone who's no longer here in Rhonda's case? Can you talk about that, just the personal?
A connection to the cases? Yeah, I mean, they're all important to me. I think of them all the time and think of the different cases and the victims, and so, and in my experience here, that's cold cases is probably the most valuable work that I've done.
Anyone else?
Do we have name and spelling and title?
Yes, we can get that to you. And also, we have pictures and video of the crime lab to help you put your stories together that we can give you afterwards. But thank you so much for covering this story.